Okay, the last part of today is talking about what the data we actually send across the web is. So far, we talked about URLs. That tells us how do you find things on the web. Then we talked about HTTP, which says how do you actually receive things over the web or send requests and receive responses over the web. And the final thing we have to talk about to put all the pieces together is what is that stuff you're actually sending? When you open a web page, how does the web page look so nice? How do you know where to put the different pictures and the different text? So the final thing we'll talk about is the languages that we use to make a web page look nice. So that's what we'll talk about in this section. There's 3 different things that are commonly used to make a web page look nice when you download it. So one thing to note is that when you use the web, you don't really have to use these things. For example, if you have a URL that's asking for a PDF, well then you get a PDF file back and we don't need any of this markup language to make the web page look nice. It's just a PDF. Or if you send a URL request and it asks for an image, you just get the image back. There's nothing else to it. But if you send a URL that ends in something like HTML, well then what you're saying is actually, I don't just want an image or a PDF. I want a web page, and I want a web page that looks fancy, that has text and colors and bold text and images inside. I want to see something nice. Like if you open Wikipedia and you load up a page, well then the page that comes back is in HTML. It looks nice. Or if you go to our course website and you open the home page, you get an HTML page. It looks nice. So HTML is a markup language that makes your web pages look nice. And the way that we write HTML is we use these tags that let us insert interesting things beyond just plain text. So you could write an HTML website that's just plain text. If you go to very old websites, like professors with very old websites, they might just have a plain text HTML page. But nowadays, modern pages often have these tags that specify more interesting things. For example, you can use an IMG tag and specify that you want to put an image on the web page. You could use the B tag to put some bold text on the page. And there's all these other features. We won't go into all of them, but HTML is something you can use to make the web pages look interesting. Here are a couple of things that we will see for the purposes of attacks. So HTML is a very big language. We will not talk about most of it, but here are just a couple examples of things you can do to make your web page have interesting features. So one tag is called A, and for some reason that means link. I actually don't know why, but A stands for link for some reason, and the way that you use it is you have these A tags around text, and you can also supply an argument that says where the link should go. And the result of rendering this in your browser is a link. And if I click on this link, I will get teleported to this web page. So that's something you can do in HTML. You can also make forms. Now, I don't need you to read all of this, but some interesting parts of this form are that I can specify what I want the user to fill out. So I can say there's a name, and there should be a box for the user to fill out. And then there are these radio buttons that the user can click. And then there's a submit button. So I can specify all these things. And one interesting thing I can specify at the very top is that when someone clicks submit, I want them to make a post request to the feedback page on my website. That's what these two say. So it's saying, here's something that I'm showing to the user. Remember, HTML is like a PDF or anything else. I'm sending this code to the browser, and the browser is making it look nice. And the browser now knows if the user clicks submit, the browser should issue a second request, a new one, and it should be a post request, and it should be to the same domain /feedback. And that's how the web server receives the user's form submission. So this is also something we'll see. It's another way you can make the user's web experience more interesting. And now the user has buttons they can click that actually trigger additional HTTP requests. So if I click on that, I get a post request to this particular URL with the contents of the form. That's kind of cool. Other things you can do, you can embed an image. So maybe you have this really cool image you want to look at, and what you can do is you can use img tags, and the syntax for this is you say img, and then you say source, and then you put the tag inside. Now you don't have to close the img tag, that's a little quirk of HTML, not the most important thing, but this is the syntax you use, and the resulting web page will actually make a GET request to go download this image and then show you the image. So that's what happens if you load this page. If I load this page, first, remember what happens is you ask for the HTML, you get the HTML back, and the HTML looks like this. It's gross, it's a bunch of code, and then your browser is responsible for making this look nice and rendering it to look like this. And in the process of rendering, your browser is parsing all of this HTML, and it sees this image tag, and it thinks, I need to show this to the user. So I will make a GET request to this URL, I'll download a picture, and then I'll show the picture to the user. So this is a case where the HTML that you receive actually triggers a second HTML request in the process of loading that first HTML page. I think I slightly messed up. When you download the HTML page, this triggers an HTTP request for a second piece of data that you then render. The acronyms are hard. I always get them wrong. OK, a couple more. Something else you can do is actually put a website inside another website. Maybe this is something you've seen before. The way you do that is something called iframe. And you say, I want you to go do a GET request on this website and actually display it to the user in a little box inside of the current website. So the current website has some stuff like, I don't know, CS161 tune website above. And then this iframe takes somebody else's website, downloads it using the GET request, and then displays it inside of the current website. So it's like a website inside a website. Sometimes people call them the outer frame and the inner frame. So this is also something you can do. You can put websites inside of websites if that's something you want to do. And as before, this HTML will trigger a second HTTP request. As your browser tries to turn this code into nice looking web pages, it will make a second HTTP request to figure out what to put in that inner frame.